Whether you're right or not, narcissistic, not narcissistic, doesn't matter. It's you and your relationships with them. If you don't feel like it's healthy and it negatively impacts your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, that is enough to trust yourself.
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod, where we normalize normal and find freedom in a life unperfected. Y'all, I have a beautiful guest here with us today. I cannot wait to jump into this juicy conversation. Dr. Onalee, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
How cool is it that we crossed paths years ago in the best-selling masterclass of Gabby Bernstein, and now we're crossing paths again in Melanie Ann Layer's world.
I love that because I have so many friends that I have met through Gabby Bernstein as well that are still in my life. There's something about just the OG her, and it's like there's this synchronicity that we're like, it just ties us together. So I love that about our story.
It's so true. I was right before we got on here. I was, of course, Philly farting around on Facebook for a minute. And so I had done Kathy Heller's It's Your Turn to Podcast course like last year. And there was a friend that I made there, and she posted in the bestsellers masterclass that she had gone through that she hired Rochelle Fredson, who also I hired to do the book writing. And now she's back into writing her book. But then we met in Kathy Heller's, and I was like, Heidi, what? And so there is something about like starting with Gabby Bernstein.
Yes.
And like there's a pipeline of just incredible women with, I think, big missions and hearts doing amazing things. So it's actually so cool to see like how far you've come in your growth and evolution since that time, even though we didn't know each other very well. So it's so cool.
I love that.
I love that. Okay, so let's get into you, babe. So tell the good people just who you are and a little bit about your story and the beautiful work that you do in the world and how you ended up getting into this work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Onalee, and my main intention is to help people come home to themselves after being in narcissistic relationships. So that is my podcast, and that is what I share with the world, a recovery program of 4 steps. The reason I'm so passionate about this, though, is because of my own experience with narcissistic relationships and even coaching so many women. What I started to find out was at the root of a lot of their issues, they would come to me as they had unhealthy relationship dynamics that always ended up being what our sessions were about. And I finally then realized the root of it, and then that's what I decided to specialize in. And so I went through so much coaching, so much healing, so much therapy, and nothing was resolving until I really approached it as if it was an addiction. When I worked the 12 steps on my relationship to narcissists, that's when I finally was recovered from it. And that's then what inspired me to create my own and then share that with the world.
Wow. Okay, so many things are popping into my mind right now. So number one, okay, this narcissistic abuse in relationships is a big, big topic. And I think we are starting to wake up and come to light to see what this is more and more and more every day. What are some of those signs that you might be in a narcissistic or abusive relationship with a narcissist, or some of the themes that you coach your clients through that make it that, let me add a layer to this, that make it like an addictive behavior, make it like a love addiction?
Yes. Such a good question. And the first thing I always share is that when we say narcissistic, it's a way of describing somebody's behavior versus an actual diagnosis. Some people, that's such a big common misconception. And a lot of people get that very confused, as if we're diagnosing people or labeling people. We're really just categorizing certain ways of being that somebody is treating us. I even don't get too caught up in the label. It's just the way to make sense of
Mm-hmm.
some of the things you're going through. So, with that being said, one of the ways you know if you're in one of these kind of relationships is the way that you're feeling. If your nervous system is feeling constantly off, you feel like you're walking on eggshells, you can't express yourself in a way where you feel safe, where you feel like you're not going to get attacked or you're not going to feel like you are being gaslit. If you walk away feeling disempowered, you feel crazy, not good enough, insecure, these are some of the indications you are not in a healthy relationship. So I always tell my clients to ask yourself, how do you feel in the conversation and how do you feel when you're not with that person? And ask yourself, what within you is open and available to be treated this way? And what within you is open and available to wanting a kind of person like that? That's the addiction. This person
Mm-hmm.
isn't good to you. They're not healthy. You don't even feel good with them. So, what within you is attracted or attached to them? That's what we want to actually look at. That's what we want to start to heal and clean up.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what was that for you? If you don't mind sharing, like what was that for you?
I will share. Absolutely. Yes. For me, what I discovered was that I had a core wound of not feeling
Mm,
fully chosen. And spiritually, there was something within me that wanted to finally heal and close this core wound. A narcissist in my life was the perfect character to poke and prod at my core wound until I finally started to heal it. So, at the root of every relationship that was unhealthy for me, I felt not chosen. And so I wanted to be chosen. And so I held on for dear life to something that I wanted when I was a young girl. I wanted to be chosen. I wanted dad's
yep.
love, for example. And so I was sourcing it outside of me. So that was the addiction of it. I want to be chosen by somebody who doesn't even have the capability of choosing me. And so that was my pattern, my wound, my story on repeat until I finally discovered that was
Mm,
the common thread. So if somebody was choosing me, I would get the complete ick. I was not attracted to somebody who treated me like a queen. I would always find one little thing wrong with them and I wouldn't be a match to them. I was a match to the person who I was wanting to subconsciously close this wound and heal it. That was my pattern on repeat.
wow, wow. And I know there's probably a lot of people that are like resonating right now with the
Mhm.
not being chosen core wound. That is
Mhm.
one that I felt. That's one that I see in my clients. Now, is a narcissistic behavior where they actually seem like they're really choosing you in the beginning, like the love bombing, and then they put you at arm's length? Or do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like they reel you
Yes, of
in and then
course.
they push you
Of
away, and
course.
then we get addicted to trying to earn that love back, get that love back.
That's exactly what it is. I'm so happy that you said that because we're not crazy for just being with somebody who's not choosing us. In the beginning, we did feel very chosen. Usually, we felt special. We felt seen. We felt this is my soulmate. This is my twin flame.
Yep.
But when you're dealing with a narcissistic person, that is their game. They love bomb, they hook, and then they discard you.
Mm,
But if you have a wound that's running where you feel insecure and you feel there's a reason they're not choosing you versus you're just with somebody who was always going to do that, you will hold on for dear life and beg for them to go back to how they were in the beginning of the love bomb phase, which wasn't even real.
mm.
And so it's these two people who are becoming this energetic match. The narcissist has their own kind of dynamics and cycles, and then the wounded kind of empath also has theirs where they feel like they messed up the narcissist love in the beginning, even though the narcissist love in the beginning was never even real. So that's when we get to that point, then we'll heal from there.
Wow. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, you just said wounded empath. Will you say more
Yes.
about that?
Absolutely. So, a lot of times you will hear the dynamic of the narcissist and the empath. One is overly selfish, and then one is overly generous, overly empathetic. And so the wounded empath feels like they did something wrong. They inherently aren't good enough.
Mm,
They messed it up. That is why the love went away. That is why the behavior changed. So it's this overly insecure, bending over backwards, holding on for dear life, tolerating and accepting disrespect. being discarded over their own over insecurity, over analysis of the behavior. When we step into being a more secure empath, we keep our empathy, we keep our compassion, but from a distance. We don't allow people to keep hurting us, and we're okay with them thinking negative thoughts about us. Wounded empathy, we're being people pleasers. We're too afraid to look like the bad guy or to look mean. And so we tiptoe around what we really want to say or do, and we allow people to keep hurting us and biting us. But when we're in our power, we realize we have choice. We have a say. We don't have to stay or tolerate this kind of behavior or these kind of situations anymore. But we don't lose our empathy or our compassion.
Yeah, I feel like there's a real nuance there that you're pointing to that's really important, because I see people swing from one end to the other. It's like the wounded empath, and then we get really hardened and we have these
Absolutely.
really firm boundaries. And it's like, no, you still get to be who you like. In fact, your empath, like your empathic nature is
Yes.
usually part of your like
Yes.
superpower.
Exactly.
You just have to harness it, like the
Mm.
Care Bear stare. You have to harness it. So, what are some steps that people can take to go from wounded to healthy? Or is that your 4-step process?
Absolutely. I mean, the majority of it, the long answer, the actual process of going through it, yes, that is in the 4 steps. Absolutely, from A to Z.
Yeah.
What the Cliff Notes version of that is when you discover your core wound, right? So mine was ultimately I didn't feel chosen. A lot of my clients, when they come to me, they feel they're not seen, they're not heard, they keep getting betrayed, they keep getting abandoned. A lot of people have like a major theme. Once you discover that, then you want to go ahead and give yourself the opposite of it. So, for example, if you're wanting to be chosen by somebody else, you have to start to choose yourself. Then, if somebody enters into your life and they're not choosing you, the way that we stand strong is that we walk away from that. We don't entertain it. We don't keep talking ourselves out of somebody not choosing us. So it's ultimately we choose ourselves, we heal our core wound, but then we stop entertaining other people who are making us feel that way. So if somebody has everything else on paper, that's really great, but at the end of the day, you're not feeling fully chosen by them. It's we don't keep entertaining that or giving them a million excuses, a million benefits of the doubt. We start to really honor ourselves and choose ourselves without making it look like we're giving up on somebody or we're not kind. That's one of the main things that's key to this.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about how complex it gets when society has called us women crazy
Mm-hmm.
and we've been gaslit in a narcissistic relationship. How to discern what's real for you versus where you're stuffing or in denial, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? Because that feels really confusing for someone who has just been like ping ponged around,
Mm-hmm.
and we're told we're crazy. And it's like, no, your body's been telling you something's off the whole
Yes.
time, but then your mind told you that, no, you're crazy, you're fine. Like, how do you help? How did you untangle from that? Or how do you help women untangle for that? Because that sounds like it's challenging.
It's very challenging when you are in direct relationship with this person.
Okay.
When you can zoom out of it or you're out of the relationship, then you can see with more clarity and see it for what it is. Because when you're in that relationship, your body is in fight or flight and you are denying, as you said, our body's talking to us, our body's smart. That's where our intuition really lies. But when we are being gaslit or somebody's calling us crazy or saying you're overly emotional, we stop trusting our body and then we start numbing it out, usually overeating, over drinking, disconnecting. And so we're not listening to our body at all. When you have space from a narcissistic person and your nervous system calms down and it resets, you will be able to listen with more clarity. But one of the reasons why it's very hard to discern is because when you're with a narcissistic person, they are constantly putting stories and ideas into your head about how you are the problem, how it's your fault, how X, Y, and Z. And so it creates this doubt within you. So you start questioning, am I a bad mother? Am I a bad person? Am I insensitive? All the opposites of who you really are, but you're dealing with somebody who keeps making it known that you're the opposite of what you actually are. And so it's very hard to listen and trust yourself when you're in direct relationship with them. It's usually in hindsight, and it's when you're not in relationship and you get connected with your higher power, who is the one who determines who you really actually are and not who the narcissist is saying you are.
Yeah, I like to tell because I've sat with clients who are in narcissistic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said, when your body feels like it's in chaos
Yeah.
all the time, that's a sign. If you feel crazy all the time, that's a sign. Like it's time to step away and like clear out and regulate and ask yourself, because it is not normal
Mm-hmm.
to feel like you're in chaos. Like I've also sat as a therapist with people on the spectrum with narcissism, and I will feel that chaos
Oh, yeah.
as a therapist who's not even, you know what I mean? I'll feel it. And so it's a very unique sensation, but your body knows, right? Your body knows like something's wrong here. This is chaotic. This is confusing.
Yes.
I'm losing my footing.
Yes.
I'm losing my grounding. And I think you and I are both in the profession to like remind women to listen to their
Yes.
bodies and to bring them home to their
Yes.
truth
Yes.
that they actually know. They're not crazy. You're not the problem, but you do need space to like hear the channel, hear the calls from inside the house.
Yes, absolutely 100%. Every single thing that you just shared, it's we've disconnected, we've doubted. One thing that I find really helpful is when you're doubting and you're feeling like you're crazy or it's you must be the problem, it's remembering also that you have certain friendships where you feel uplifted and you feel supported and they get you. When you're dealing with a healthy person, that's the way that we should feel. When we're dealing with an unhealthy person, we usually feel the disempowered, doubting ourselves. So I like to, if a client comes to me, and even my previous experience, I had to remember how it feels with a healthy relationship and what's normal, how you feel with this person, even if everybody else around you loves that person. That's one of the hardest things actually I've started to see. Everyone else loves them, but you don't have a healthy experience with them. What matters is that you're honest with yourself despite what other people think or say. If you walk away from a conversation multiple times feeling like you feel worse off, now you feel like there was something condescending, there was a jab, they were rude, they say it was a joke. That's not healthy. That's not good. And so it's learning, healthy, not healthy. You don't need to desensitize or gaslight yourself around what your experience is with this person.
Yeah. Yeah, the everybody else liking them
Mhm.
and them really putting on a front for everything outside of the house and the relationship, and then having the like Dr. Jekyll, Mrs.
Yes.
Whatever the hell that saying is a huge one. And then also, yeah, when you said like they do something or say something and you just feel like dirty, like something
Yes.
something was wrong with that. It's like listen to that, lean into that. Your body is so infinitely wise, and your energy
Yes.
knows.
And it's asking yourself, what within me keeps entertaining this relationship or friendship where I walk away every time feeling worse off?
Yeah.
I experienced that with a female friendship actually. And I would leave every conversation I just felt icky. I felt lower. I felt inferior. I felt not good enough. But this was but then I would get like the love bombing of, but you're so beautiful or something like that, because that would hook me in. But then I would doubt how I felt after every interaction or conversation. So I had to zoom out and use my discernment and say, whether I'm right or not right, at the end of the day, I don't feel healthy. I don't feel good. And that gets to be enough for me. And that's what I love to share and make a point on. Whether you're right or not, narcissistic, not narcissistic, doesn't matter. It's you and your relationship to them. If you don't feel like it's healthy and it negatively impacts your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, that is enough to trust yourself. So the next layer is then being okay with not needing to fully explain or for somebody else to get why maybe you either need to distance yourself or not have the relationship. That's when you're in your empowered empathy, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. And a lot of people, it's very hard for them to walk away or distance themselves when something doesn't feel right out of fear of what the other person will say or judge them or be mean to them, an adverse reaction, attack them, whatever it is. But that's the key to releasing these kind of relationships, in my opinion.
Yeah, trusting yourself, right?
Yes.
Trusting yourself. So I know coming home to oneself is a huge part of the work you do. It's your podcast. Will you talk more about what that means to you?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. There's so many overall meanings. A lot of them we touched on. It's coming home to literally listening to your body, to your wisdom, to your heart, to your guidance, your gut, what your mind is telling you. It's trusting that. It's also coming home to how you felt when you were a younger child or how you wanted to feel. You were special, you were unique, seen, loved, protected. But the overall of what I would say is it's coming home to a relationship with your higher power, whatever your understanding of that is knowing you are worthy, you are lovable, you were created, you're meant to thrive, and you're giving your power to that higher power and not to people. That's what's made the
Ooh.
biggest difference in my life. That's ultimately what even my 4 steps are really leading to. It's this connection with the higher power, the one whose approval is all that we actually need,
Mm-hmm.
the one who gets to say if we're beautiful, not beautiful, worthy, not worthy. It's connecting with that above all else.
Mm.
And I feel that's when we will then stop giving people our power. And when we stop giving people our power, we're not an energetic match to narcissistic or psychopathic or unhealthy people anymore. We won't allow it or tolerate it.
Mm. So there's a real deep spiritual component to the work that you do, because that
Oh,
was
yes.
such a saving grace, or what's the word I'm trying to say? Like a landline, like a life
Yes.
raft, a life raft.
Yes. Oh my
What
God.
is the thing?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that people, when you actually go through a recovery process,
Hmm.
you learn the power of spiritual connection and the relationship to self through that, and just how healing and profound it can be, and that you don't really need the addiction or the people or the external things, because
Hmm.
you're so at home with yourself and with whatever, your relationship is to whatever the thing is that you see, that you spiritually believe in. But I think that that's profound in the healing journey as well.
Yes, and that's what the 12 steps ultimately are. It's to find a relationship with a higher power of your understanding that you trust, and at even the 12th step you have a spiritual awakening and you go and carry the message. So it is very spiritual, and that's why I feel it finally worked for me, because it wasn't just talking about it anymore or having the logic of I realize I'm in a narcissistic relationship again. It's okay. We need a spiritual solution. We need the higher power to enter. We need to take an inventory. We need to release resentments. We need to heal the core wounds. There's stuff underneath in the back of the closet, the skeletons. We got to clean that out. I feel until we do that, we keep relapsing over and over and over again and not knowing why. We keep tripping on a rug where all this dirt is under there, but it feels too heavy and too scary. But if we want the rug to be flat and to be able to walk on it, we got to clean it out.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the process I did with myself. That's what I take people through. And there's a reason why I feel like it finally worked then.
Yeah, and you asked a question, I think twice, but I feel like we need to double click on it, because it's like, I think it's going to point people to where there might be some deeper work to be done, which was like
Hmm.
something, and I'm paraphrasing for you, but like, what part of me is
Mm.
attracting, wanting to be with, searching for this love in this way? What was that question that you shared, or in your words?
Yes, yes. I always say, what within you is attracted or available to this? A lot of times we can feel almost victims to certain behaviors, relationship dynamics, patterns, but we're not taking a look at there's actually something that's open and available for this person to leave and to come back. There's something within me that hasn't left or hasn't spoken up. And that's what I have people look at. That's when you call your power back. So there's many people who are probably attracted to you, but you're attracted to the one not choosing you, for example, in my case. So I like to ask people what within you is attracted to that? What within you is available for him to leave, to come back? He can't do that if you're not open and available for that kind of behavior. We want to see that you're playing at least a part in it.
Hmm. And do you find that that's typically a wounded child part? That's,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, because I do parts
That,
work, and I'm like, it always
yeah,
comes back to a wound in
of
childhood that
course.
we need our higher self to reparent and love on
Hmm.
that child. And like you said at the beginning, like whatever it is you're seeking from the narcissistic relationship, giving it
Yes.
to yourself, your adult
Yes.
self, what I call that, the CEO self, the higher self. The
Ooh.
CEO self needs to reparent the child and give the child what it's seeking in your current
Mm-hmm.
circumstance, whether it is the numbing with the addiction or the escape with the love addiction or whatever it is. We can heal our own parts.
Yes. Yes. That's so in alignment with what I would share is that, especially if we feel, for example, we wanted mom or dad to choose us or some parental figure, but at the time we didn't have the consciousness to really process what was going on. We thought, oh, something within me is not good enough. Let me try harder. Let me try harder. We think we messed it up. That's why mom either left or they emotionally abandoned, or the little child within us doesn't know how to process that, right?
Mhm.
So that little child is, it's the same kind of little child until we really heal it when we're in these narcissistic relationships, who's like, why won't they choose me? Why won't they come back? Why won't they? Why won't they? But in reality, the mature version of ourselves, the higher self goes, the reason they're not choosing you is because you actually deserve better. The reason they're not choosing you is because they're not healthy for you. They're not actually meant to choose you. So it's also reframing and shifting from the insecure, I hope they choose me, somebody you don't even want to choose, but you just want them to choose you so bad because you need that, versus actually, thank God they're not choosing me, because if they did choose me, I would be with them and they're not even who I want. So that's why that we got to do the middle work, I believe, of healing that core wound of not needing to be chosen outside of yourself. You choose yourself and then you don't entertain it. Then there's not this, it's almost like the lens comes off and we're like, why was I even wanting that person to choose me? There's like not even 5 things I can say of why I liked that person. It was just the need to be chosen that was driving the whole wound.
And it's so deep and subconscious that it's strong.
Of
Like your
course. Of
conscious
course. It's an
mind can know
addiction.
exactly. Your conscious mind knows this isn't healthy for me. Your subconscious is it's like a survival mechanism. I need love. I need to be
Yes.
chosen. I need to be accepted, or I'm not a lovable, valuable human. Like people, this is where I
Yes.
think we have to talk about self-compassion. Like we humans, we do fucked up
Mm-hmm.
things for good reasons, guys.
Yes.
We have addiction for good reason. We seek for love in wrong places for good reason. We lash out for good reason. It's not because we're bad or wrong or flawed. It's a core need is trying to be met at the survival level of the most primitive part of your brain, your subconscious, and your nervous system. And it will do what it needs to do to get that need met until you get that need met in a healthier way.
Yes, yes. I love to extend grace and compassion to anyone who's going through this, because we're just trying to soothe our nervous system in the way that we know how to do it quickest. So sometimes reaching back out or picking up the phone, it is serving a purpose in that moment. We're trying to feel better. We're feeling sensations in our body is trying to actually help us, but it always ends in an unhealthy way. But when we can start to have that compassion of it's just trying to help us, it's not trying to hurt us, it's trying to help us. But now let's slow down with a little bit more emotional maturity and let's try to soothe ourselves and have a healthy consequence follow after. Let's do it in a healthier way. But until we get to that compassion place and realize we were just trying to soothe ourselves or feel better, that's why we were doing it. I think from that place, then we'll be able to take actions to resolve it. Most people are beating themselves up. They have so much guilt, so much regret, so much shame. Why did I do this? It's not productive in order to get to the solution. The neutrality and acceptance, then we can go into the solution.
Oh, heck yes. And I want to share an image. So I like to imagine that once we recognize the parts of us that we're seeking outside of us for these things, that you literally, like, as your CEO self, you go and put flowers at her feet and you adorn her and you thank her and you just like shower her with so much love and appreciation for like doing what the fuck she knew how to do to get us love. And instead of shaming her and criticizing her and wanting to psychoanalyze her till the cows come home, it's like, no, go adore her, put flowers at her feet, thank her for her service, and then give her something more age appropriate to do.
I think that's so beautiful, because that version, she was doing her best with the level of consciousness that she had. She picked the best decision of what was right, and now she has more information, she has more wisdom, she has more discernment. So really just loving and soothing and not making her wrong. I feel like that's such a principle of that. Just soothing her, nurturing her, loving her, accepting her, and now okay, we graduate to the next level, but honoring that version instead of shaming that version, which a lot of us, I think, are usually doing.
And yeah, and I feel like that keeps us stuck in these cycles.
Absolutely.
Right. And okay, so much good stuff here. So
Yes.
you are also sober, right?
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Sure.
Okay. Well, because I want to talk about the self-love thing, but to
Sure.
me, it's all interconnected. It's like you get out of an unhealthy relationship and you start taking really beautiful care of yourself. And then you start finding other things, other, coping mechanisms and patterns that aren't healthy. So then, yeah, you're going to remove drugs and alcohol. Like you move,
Yeah.
it's a
Oh, yeah.
form. To me, recovery is such a real tangible form of self-love. So I would just love to hear any part that you want to share about your journey with all that and how it relates to the self-love, which I know you
Absolutely.
really are such a champion for women.
Yes. I mean, any opportunity to speak on sobriety, I'm more than happy to. That's something that lights me up more than anything. So I'm happy that you brought that up. What I will share is, if anyone here, if you're struggling with addiction, it's actually not too complicated to qualify yourself as an addict or addicted to a certain substance. For example, it really qualifies you if you can't control the amount you take and if you can't entirely quit on your own. It doesn't even matter how much you do or how many days apart or if you're living under a bridge. That's actually not the qualifications. And so for me, I white knuckled it for 4 years trying to quit on my own, and I can't. I could have the intention of a glass or two of wine. I personally can't. That glass of wine could turn into 20 drinks and a blackout later, and I didn't intend it even in the slightest bit. And so for me, it was destroying my life, destroying my health. I ended up in the hospital, actually. That was my big interruption to get me sober and to do things. And what I will say is my experience with sobriety is that it's just an everlasting peace that I have now. I can walk with my head held high. I'm confident. I'm secure at my body. I feel truly at home. I give my whole life to my higher power. I ask my higher power's will before every single decision. Every single day, the first thing I do is pray to my higher power to lead and guide my day, lead and guide all of my decisions. So I'm not just blindly making decisions and choices that keep harming me. I'm inviting a source, a support to lead and guide my life. And to me, what else sobriety has really helped with is releasing any self-seeking. I'm here to serve. I'm here to support. I know when it's time to take a rest or to say no to something, and I don't have a fear of looking like a bad person or being selfish. That allows me to maintain my energy because I know my purpose. But to me, sobriety is just, it's really feeling confident in my own skin and not trying to harm and hurt myself, but to actually thrive and be grateful and be an active participant of life who actually really wants to be here, who doesn't feel burdened by it, which was how I felt personally in active addiction for many years.
Wow, that's such a beautiful story. Did you quit while you were in a bad relationship or after?
It was after.
It
Yep.
was okay. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got
yeah.
out of the relationship and then you got right with yourself. You're like, well, you hit a hard moment in the hospital. That's actually
Yes.
scary.
Yes.
But those things sometimes happen to wake us up. And I always like thank the universe. Like, thank you for hitting me in the, I say in the tits. Thank you for
I
hitting
love
me
it.
in the tits hard enough that I could see
Oh,
that this
yes.
is not no bueno. I actually got really sick in December of last year, like so sick. And nobody could tell me what was wrong with me, but my eyes were turning yellow. I had crazy, like worse than labor pains for over a week. And everyone was like, all your tests are coming out. So I made the conscious decision to quit drinking, to quit eating the way I was eating. Like I had all these bad habits that were to me, where over time were just stacking up. And at the same time as I'm becoming more and more conscious of a woman and wanting to tune my instrument of my intuition and really hear my body signals and really be fully expressed, I was like, there's not room for this anymore. There's just not room for that, because that's numbing me from, the overwhelm or the pain or the whatever, but it's also numbing me from, the spiritual guidance and the intuitive hits and the creative wisdom and the like pleasure and the bliss and the aliveness is my word for the year, the aliveness. And so I had made some conscious choices from a place of self-respect and self-love that I was going to remove these things that hindered my ability to feel fully fucking alive. And it is like so juicy.
Yes.
It is so
Yes.
juicy.
Yes to
So juicy.
all of
Like now
that.
I'm so sure of myself. I'm confident in my decisions. I trust my feelings. I used to discredit and disqualify my feelings because I didn't know if they were alcohol infused or shame induced from the drinking the night before. Or like I would have waves of inspiration where I would be super inspired and then I would be like in a shame spiral because I did it again and I drank, a whole bottle or 6 glasses of wine instead of 2. And I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
This is not meant. And also my body, I think, just started to resist it.
Oh, for
And
sure.
the hospitalization, I believe,
Mm.
was like a spiritual intervention because medically, nobody could tell me exactly why my body was shutting down. I believe my body was just like, and you're done, my love. You have a bigger purpose here on earth. Let's stop fucking around and finding out with these things and let's get to business. And I was like, heard,
Yes.
heard. Okay, I'm
Yes.
ready.
Yes. Oh my God. I love your spin on that because I so agree. I always say you're lucky you had the crash or the rock bottom or your body signaling to you this isn't working anymore. You can't do it because that's your interruption. That's that hard stop. That's that God or higher power isn't going to put this stamp of approval of the way you're doing things and say, here, keep doing that. This thing that keeps harming you and making your life so unmanageable up and down, not able to fully be in your purpose. Here's all the proof and evidence that that works. I always say it's a gift if you struggle with this to have some kind of big interruption because especially if it's not big enough, we won't change it. What would make us change? We'll keep doing that.
Right. And I didn't have any big consequences. Like I was still doing the damn thing as a mother, as a worker, like you wouldn't, it was an internal struggle that people like that I was done fighting.
Yeah.
I was done battling my own self over this thing. What a waste of energy for me.
I say done is done. I say no matter how many times it took you, as long as you get to the point of done. I say that with narcissistic relationships. I say that with alcohol, drugs, smoking, whatever it is that you personally feel like you don't want to be doing anymore. However many times it takes you until you get to that final one, that crash, that burn, it's worth it to eventually get to done. And what I will say is my last addiction to recover from was the narcissistic relationships. I had recovered from the alcohol, from the drugs, from the smoking, all the other things, but I still had the addiction running through. And that's why then I needed to specifically work the 12 steps on narcissistic relationships because that addiction was very, very powerful. It had a huge hold on me personally. So that's why I'm so connected to it. It's not just I get to be one of the experts at it. I really went through it. And so I know what it feels like. Yeah.
You're the lived embodiment of it.
Absolutely.
And I think what's so tricky and sneaky about that is addiction loves to jump, and addiction can jump to things like a love addiction or workaholism, things that are actually like either celebrated by society or just you wouldn't think it's a problem, like a relationship with someone who seems really charming and amazing. So it's like we don't always come face to face with that dragon right away because society is like cheering you on, like, go girl boss, work hard. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
of course.
that was a sneakier addiction.
A sneakier one. And it's usually not as accepted, if you will, to go get support in a 12-step program on that specific addiction. That's where it's either shame or there's not as much like, well, I don't know if I need 12 steps for that. And so that's why it's like making it more modern, more accessible, because we actually, a lot of us do struggle with it. So yeah, that one was very, very, very sneaky for me. And too, I have an addictive personality, addictive mind. It could be with cinnamon buns. It could be with whatever. It's the more and more, there's no off button. So yeah.
Well, I think it's like a dopamine thing. Like I think people like me and you will always need some freaking extra dopamine, which is why it's so important we have those self-love, healthy habits like taking walks and taking a dip in the ocean or, all the things I do all day long, because it's like my brain is craving that all the time. And so we have to work you really have to like double down on the self-love and self-care to like be healthy and whole. What do you say to that?
Absolutely. I like that you brought up the dopamine thing because I talk a lot about the nervous system. A lot of the reasons why we struggle with narcissistic relationships or whatever it is that's not healthy for us, it's also because it's producing sensations in the body. The dopamine, the adrenaline, the cortisol decreases, the endorphins. Our body literally physically becomes addicted to certain sensations and feelings in our body. That's why logically, too, we go, well, I don't know why I keep doing this. It keeps hurting me. I don't even like it, but the initial high has such an effect on the body that we keep craving it. And so I'm very big on too, how can you go create those sensations in your body in a healthy, sustainable way that is long term and doesn't have a negative consequence? So constantly finding, it's a lot of my fourth step is where you start to enjoy life, start to love yourself, start to nurture yourself, start to exercise, but exercising because you want to feel good. How can you create feel good experiences in your life instead of needing to source it outside of you from something that's going to keep harming you? Because anything outside of us, it can be a cherry on top, but when it's the source of us feeling those dopamine hits or feeling good or feeling that love, it's always going to come with a crash and a burn. So I'm very big on helping people really learn how to feel sensations that are healthy, that are sustainable, and don't come with that crash and that burn. That's when we're really free from addictions, in my opinion.
Oh my God, that crash. Girl, I used to like, this was my trifecta. I would like get everybody to bed, like my husband and my child, everybody to bed, and I would drink wine by myself. I would eat, I would put together like an epic charcuterie for one, like 4 cheeses, crackers, like this. I was like 30 pounds, 35 pounds heavier PS because I'm just like drinking a bottle of wine. I've got like a fucking full on meat and cheese platter, and I would buy shit online. And the next day I would wake up and I'm telling you that crash was so gnarly, bro. I mean, it was so brutal. And then the boxes would come and I wouldn't really remember
I
ordering them. And I'm like,
know.
this is not okay, friends. This is not okay. And the fact that I tolerated that crash for as long as I did was also just like wild. Like I had to make peace with it. But then I also found like there is something about me that is so tenacious and unfuckwithable because your girl handled that crash for decades like a boss. Like I couldn't handle that one more time, I don't think. It would totally do me over. I would probably cry for 2 days. I would have to cancel my calendar. Like I am so sensitive to that kind of shit now that I've done the healing work I've done. But I lived in that cycle of that crash that was so gnarly forever. And I just like healed the part that was addicted to the cycle and why it led to the addiction. And then I pulled out, I like extrapolated the gold from it of like,
Yeah.
man, I can handle some shit. But what if I were to like handle that in a way of like responsibility in my leadership and in my mission? What if I were to use that to help my kids be the most authentic version of themselves? What if I were to use that for creation? Like I just use it differently now, but man, she's a fighter. I can't even believe she
Yes.
put up with that shit for so long.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how you can extract the gold from it. You can see the silver lining or the gratitude, shifting the perspective of what was the good that came out of it and instead of just the bad. I have a podcast episode that's called Don't Curse the Crash because the crash has a lot of clarity and a lot of contrast. So for me, I had had a relapse, and my relapse was my step one of saying, okay, this really is it for me. I see I can't drink like a normal person as much as I want to and as much as I go try to. And so that crash for me was exactly what I needed personally to finally get to the point of done is done. I see this with clients. I saw this with narcissistic relationships too. That final straw, that last reopening, that crash, that burn, it's like that was the exact clarity, the exact moment, the exact timing where I finally decided to close the door and to keep it shut. Had I maybe not entertained it or what, I might have still had in the back of my mind, want to be with that person, let's try it again. The crash will show you so much, especially like that. And you never know which crash will be the last crash. But I always say our crashes really have contrast and clarity. Don't beat yourself up for them. They could be a really big qualifying factor to have you finally be done for the rest of your life. That crash might have been the exact thing to be done forever.
Ooh, that's so That is
Yeah.
so true. I call it running into the fire. I'm like,
Mhm.
sometimes you just have to run back into that fire, honey, and get
Yeah.
burned one last time to be done getting burned.
That's it.
It's all productive. It's all moving you closer to what you're really here to do, right? Like who
Exactly.
you really are.
Nothing's a mistake. Like, it's just like what our mentor says, right? There were no wrong turns. There were no mistakes. All of it, we could either extract a lesson or we can actually pull out the times of love and gratitude. Nothing was wasted. And I think when we really can approach life that way, we also aren't so afraid moving forward because we have a new perspective of the past. It shapes how we enter into the future. But I love it. It sounds like you're really on board with that too. Like changing the perspective, seeing the gift of it, not beating yourself up or staying in shame. I just think the whole planet would be changed if we all could be on board with shifting our experiences, especially the past ones. They all were leading you to a certain moment, to a certain experience, to a certain solution. None of it was wasted. None of it was a U-turn.
100%. Mic drop. We're going to end on that mic drop moment. Dr. Onalee, tell us what you're working on, how people can connect with you, how they can be in your world, how they can learn more, be in your magic, and all the good things.
Yes. I'm most active on my Instagram at Dr. Onalee. All the social medias, pretty much, you find me at Dr. Onalee. I like to do a lot of reels and my Coming Home podcast. That's where you'll get a lot more information, and a lot of meditations are coming out. That's a huge thing that I really do myself, and I love to walk my clients through. My biggest recommendation, if this episode was really resonating with you, which I'm sure it was since you're at the end of it, the 4 steps is my best next step in order to recover. So all that information, you always can shoot me a message. The information is all over my profile, but that's my main thing right now. And then there's a next level of the woman in power or the man in power work too. That's to really help you after you've really recovered from the narcissistic relationships. And then you're more in a state of really stepping into your confidence, your power, your beauty, your worth, being that powerful version that you dream of. But the 4 steps, especially based on this conversation, would be my greatest recommendation after here.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me here, to chat with my community. I so respect and appreciate you. And yeah, let's just keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. I loved it so much. And thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to you, anyone coming and sharing. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to talk.
Yeah. Share with us what resonated from this conversation. And to the listener, we're sending you so much love today and always. Take care of yourselves and there for each other. And I'll see you same time, same place next week. Hey, mama, if you made it to the end of this episode, I just want to virtually high five you because you've said yes to the opportunity of taking better care of yourself. And that is so meaningful and so amazing. You have no idea the ripple of goodness that's to come. If you've been enjoying the show, if you've been finding it helpful, if you've laughed a little or learned a new technique, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure that you're following the show, that you've given us a 5-star rating and left a review? That will absolutely help us get this podcast into more heads and hearts of as many mamas as possible. Because when we heal the mother, we heal the world. Also, if there's a specific episode that you've loved, will you make sure to share it with a friend? Just send them the link or share it on social media and make sure you tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected because I absolutely love seeing that this is actually giving you the impact that you so desire and deserve. Thank you so much, mamas. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves and therefore each other.